Right, welcome. Welcome to the talk this evening when it's my great pleasure to introduce a guest speaker, Ted Capstick, who's an esoteric astrologer. But tonight we're following on the theme of investigating keys to the intuition and the different keys that can help us develop a link to that insight that's within all of us. So Ted is going to talk tonight especially about the spiritual diary as a key and the power of the spiritual diary to build and open the Anatakarana, or the rainbow bridge between the soul and the personality. So I will hand it over to you, Ted. So if you can unmute.
Okay, yes. Yeah. Now, Teresa, give me some guidance. You know how I can talk. How long do you want to talk so that the meditation has got plenty of time?
That's fine. So long as we start the meditation by past, even getting on for 25 to is fine. So yeah. Do you want me to give you an idea when you've got 5 minutes to go?
Yeah, because when I get up onto the mental plane, I can lose it physically, you know.
I know.
You okay. know, don't you? You know. So maybe past 7, just, you know, give me
I'll wave at you.
I have got it down in the corner of the screen, but I need my glasses in even more powerful glasses. So actually, if you just at 7, that'd be great. All right. Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, good evening all. And the sheets that, the 3 sheets that you should have received,
which I will put on the screen.
Yeah, we'll just let's have the one with the triangles first, perhaps. We could.
There you go.
Yeah. These sheets are given out each time I do an esoteric astrology reading with people, because they marry in very well with the concepts. And that diagram itself is useful. And I'm sure many of you are very, very familiar with it. I want to perhaps emphasize some of the aspects that are particularly relevant. You can see in the diagram, I have superimposed on that diagram across 2 arms of the cross, for the red horizontal and the green vertical. And they are so important, as I get constantly nudged from within when I'm doing my interpretations, that we need to bear in mind that we're all at different points on the evolutionary path. There's some behind us and some in front of us, whoever we are. And this seems to correlate very well with the degree of time we spend on the red horizontal arm of the cross, the horizontal, which is all those things I've listed there, which we might say is what most people consider to be living a life. And that is when consciousness is in its waking mode. Now, one of the things the wisdom goes to great lengths to point out is that consciousness is an independent point of energy which has no permanent residence. In fact, for the 16 hours of the day that we are awake, approximately, it resides in the cortex of the brain. And it gives us that acuity and sensation of sharp physicality that we're so used to when we're awake. But when we go to sleep, where does consciousness go? Well, it goes out of the realm of time and space, that's for sure. Because if we are in a place we don't know, we can wake up, or even if we're in our own bed, and we don't know what time it is. And we may not even know for a moment what place it is, because consciousness is not residing in the brain. And so we start to understand that consciousness can go into many realms, the astral realms, the mental realms, and if we're evolved enough, the spiritual realms. But it will go into those higher realms in proportion to the amount of time we spend on nourishing the vertical arm of the cross, which takes us right the way down through the bridge between the two, there where the arrow is, thank you, between the mental body, which if you can switch right to the bottom of the sheet, we can go mental plane 7654. That's lower mental, and it thinks in words because words are a function of the brain. And then the higher mental is symbol and images. And we know our dreams don't come through in words, they come through in images. And the understanding of dreams is that you take the symbols, like the symbols from your chart, or they may be from Finnion's Tree of Life or Teresa's Tarot, and they can be turned into more specific and images which relate to ourselves existentially. Therefore, we should see that the part of the idea of building a rainbow bridge is to work in mental matter and to start to understand that, as the great saying in the language goes, a picture paints 1,000 words. We don't want to be stuck with word consciousness because it doesn't exist in the vertical arm of the cross, which we're all going to when we die. We go there when we go to sleep temporarily. We can go there in deep meditation. But the true spiritual path, in my understanding, is trod when we start to seek counsel from the vertical arm of the cross. And we've got there meditation, dreams, study, regression. Anywhere where you close your eyes, brooding, contemplating, reflecting, all this idea of slowing down sensory input. And of course, we can do this willfully in the day in meditation, but we don't get the chance to do it willfully at night because consciousness can go off and we're not really in control of it. We need to be in control. We're not in control. It goes off to where our center of gravity, as it were, of energy would be. And if we can raise no higher than the lower astral realms, we might have a lot of nightmares and we might be stuck in with various energy entities in the inner worlds and wake up and think, thank goodness that was a dreadful dream or whatever. But it may be an experience in the astral world. Generally speaking, the difference between dreams and astral experiences are that a dream will fade extremely quickly by the time you've eaten your cereal or muesli. Whereas an astral journey could be told the day after, maybe even the day after that, with a good degree of clarity. Now, I saw this person and he had a stepladder on his head, or whatever it might be. It can be some very strange things in the astral world. But what we're trying to do here is, first of all, accept that there is an inner world that needs our nourishment. Now, we'll see that the bottom triangle, I've also colored in red ink there, the personality, and we don't need to talk about that so much, except it is important to understand how that personality becomes integrated, because that looks nice and symmetrical, just like the soul, but the soul cannot bring energy to bear on its personality if that personality is in any way fractured, and it won't do it. It won't do it. And the understanding through the chart, 10th house in particular, the personality integration is this. And you can ask yourselves this question. Are you able to think mentally without the intrusion of emotions? It's quite a subtle one because most people's thoughts are usually motivated by desire. And in that case, so a project on the mental plane, something that you can, in thought, circumscribe by dealing with it in its abstract form and in its concrete form. We say, can you reason from the general to the particular on the outgoing arc, and from the particular to the general on the arc of return? And if you can, you've circumscribed in mental matter the subject. That hasn't involved any emotion. That is a mental, and it's something that occultists, people who are working, not like mystics. Mystics go straight in and have a peak experience, but they can't sustain it. They come down, the mystics. I work as, I would say, as an occultist, or training as an occultist, to try and understand energies so we can work back up to Godhead with a degree of conscious objectivity and knowing what we are doing. So there's the first thing about the integrated personality, a mental thought form. And then use the emotions, the force of the emotions, to pour in creative energy to vivify that thought form with life. And this is a different view of a lot of what people think emotions are about. Attaching, the satiation of desire, diversion, using emote, the word from the Greek means to go outwards with the emotions. We're talking here about gathering the emotions in and putting them into, say, a course of study would be an example, or you fall in love like I did with the subject of astrology, and you pour your emotional energy into it. And then the third phase is that you're actually, with a degree of order and organization, can take that vivified thought form and put legs on it so that it appears in the physical world. That's tough. And I know through 20 odd years of doing these interpretations with people, how people are frustrated by the fact that they don't appear to have any kind of spiritual link at all, although they know that they do have a soul intuitively, but it doesn't seem to be able to manifest in their lives. And a lot of the reason, as shown, can be that that personality has to have the work done on it. And it is mentioned here. I'm not going to be reading, you've got the sheet anyway, and you're well able to digest the sheet on the spiritual diary, but I will make some points about it. It does say, number 3, right at the bottom of the first page, the spiritual diary sets the tone and the pace for the personality expression until these become integrated into the nature and no longer need a spur. And so we can write down, let's say we're fairly level-headed, and then we yell at somebody for some reason and we don't really understand it. We feel quite upset afterwards that we've yelled at somebody in that way. That's the kind of thing that can be put into the spiritual diary. It's not just about spiritual experiences. In fact, at first, and I've been keeping it since 1996, it's a long time. At first, it was just full of, and for many years, not just at first, for many years, it was a litany of the personality shortcomings that I was being kind of forced from within to write down and accept needed changing. So that's the first thing about these vehicles. We know them all in their own way, and in a specific way. I need the mental body for this, I need the emotional body for that, physical for this. But it's actually when we're starting to look for soul infusion, which of course is bringing the triangles together, then that is what we will be needing to be done. And so we are roughed up in the outer world. And this is where the horizontal life is so important spiritually. It's not just to give us a living. It's not just to help us to bring up our family and to have friendships and social networks. It's all that because that's experience, but it has an inner effect to it. And that inner effect is to rough us up in such a way that we become tough. We become able to deal with the vicissitudes of life. We could ask you about this, Teresa, and ask you, has life roughed you up somewhat? Yes. And have you become a better product as a result of it? Well, if we're starting to get a degree of spiritual maturity, we'll say that death of a loved one, or that court case I had to go through, or that illness I had to deal with, whatever it might be, actually helped me to grow. And then the soul notices that the light is shining in a much more sustained and intense way in the personality, looking for the blend of the two. And so it can be that we might spend 20% of our time in the inner world. We certainly can't spend, I would suggest, more than 40% of our time in the inner world, if that, because we're down here for a purpose. And that service work, whether it be working as a receptionist in a funeral parlor or doing some great humanitarian work with one of the big charities in Africa, is still on the horizontal arm of the cross. Our service work is still there. It is what we give out. And the injunction I've always been given is, Edward, they call me, come into the inner worlds, into the vertical arm, and get your inspiration from the spiritual worlds, and then go and give it out on the horizontal arm of the cross. get it in and bring it. And that implies that there is a bridge patent there, the Anatakarana. And that's a very healthy looking bridge to me. But what about if it was just an energy strand, called the Anatakarana in Sanskrit? If there isn't much building work being done, more building work needs to be done. But it's very likely that we started this work lifetimes ago. And in those lifetimes, we have been able to get to a point of building the bridge, which is the degree of contact with the soul. So what we're trying to do in the occult sense is have a more consistent contact with the soul, other than the mystic going in and getting something as a peak experience. We want something that's going to help us on a day-to-day basis. And the whole point of the spiritual diary is to build and widen that bridge. And therefore, if we have been doing it in previous lives, we will recapitulate very quickly, it seems, to the point at which we built the bridge. And then it might be hard work. So it might be like this, and then suddenly the curve becomes a lot steeper, like exponential. It becomes a lot more difficult to make the progress. And then we know we really are into the new area. And so what my suggestion is that, and many people may be doing it in any case, is to start this confidential dialogue with the soul. And it can be of all the problems that you may have, and all the conflicts and dichotomies that exist in your mind, even about spiritual work, but certainly about the outside. Spoke to a young lady the other day who said that for months she's been bullied at work. And I said, right. She understood about the spiritual diary, and without saying write it in your spiritual diary, I said, write out everything about that particular instance that's happening to you, like a log, to your boss. She said, you go mad, I will get the sack then. I said, I didn't say send it, write it down. And immediately the writing down stops it from going round and round and round in your head, because you can write it down, draw a line under it, the problem hasn't gone away, but you've put it to your soul, and your soul knows, your higher self knows what you're going through in this case. And so there are some suggestions there under how to set up the diary, quite straightforward. I would say that number 3, although they're very powerful books that are mentioned there, I didn't pick those books out, and I certainly wouldn't start with The Voice of the Silence by Blavatsky. I hope other people might agree with me on that. Yeah. It's a very tough book, but anything that inspires you. And I went back to my first spiritual diary in 1996, and I noticed that the first thing I wrote in it was Desiderata. I don't know how many people know that particular piece of spiritual prose.
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Desiderata. And go placidly amidst the noise and haste of life, and remember what peace there may be in silence. There's about 70 or 80 lines in it, and that inspired me greatly. I'm old enough to remember that a guy called Les Crane did a single on it, made a single out of it, and it got to number 7 in the charts, on top of the pops and sang it. But it's a wonderful piece, unabridged, a wonderful piece of prose that inspired me, and it's the first thing I wrote down. But anything that inspires you, so it can be a story that you've heard. There's been plenty of heroic stories told in this time of lockdown, which have touched our hearts, and one may be something that you would want to write about. But the real deepness of these sheets comes in the 9 points of the purpose of the diary. And I don't want to say too much, because you can read it for yourselves and ask questions if you wish. But I think the idea is that if you do keep a log, you've got something in time where you can look back on, and you can gauge just how well or otherwise you are doing with your emotions or your mentality, or even your link with the soul and your ability to get through images through meditation and dreams. The waking dream in particular is used by the soul. It can be 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning when it's getting light at the moment at this time of year, and suddenly you can sit up in bed, bolt upright. That was clear. The soul waits. I think it's called hypnagogia. The soul waits for the point where you're not too asleep to get it, but you're not too far away from the inner worlds not to receive it. So it waits for that moment where the brain consciousness is there, but is not fully engaged. And they're usually the most valuable insights that we can get. And this is what we would normally get as an intuitive flash, but now we're trying to increase the frequency of the intuitive flashes so that they become a bit more of a light we can grasp, because the intuitive flash, whilst very useful, is very, very short and may only be able to convey part of what is needed to be conveyed. So it does mention there a valuable chronology of one's progress towards union with the higher self. If maintained conscientiously, and I used to keep it every day in those early years, provide essential guidance in time of stress or great difficulties. You can ask questions. This is the real value of it. You can ask questions of your higher self concerning your life, concerning your personality life, concerning things that have happened. You might have a diagnosis that you want to ask the soul about. Is this serious? Do I need to be aware of whatever? And you will get an answer. You will get an answer camped in symbols and images that are familiar to you. And I have got the testimony, this is not just me saying this, I've got the testimony of literally hundreds of people who have said to me, the most valuable thing you told me, well, the chart reading was very interesting, but the most valuable thing you told me was to keep a spiritual diary. Let's have a quick look at point number 5. In psychoanalysis, the individual is freed from the childhood psyche. Now, a lot of people come to me and say, I don't talk to my brother. And I say, well, why not? Yeah, well, he got the best of life. You see, my mum and dad favoured him, and it wasn't fair on me, and I don't think, and he's never acknowledged this. So there is something to do with the way that we've been brought up, the parents we've had, the family we've got, all usually heavily karmic, and therefore require, again, seen in the chart, and we can say, no, you must break that silence, otherwise there's unfinished karma between you, and you'll come back again in an awkward situation, probably as another family relative. And so this idea that we have to face this first before we have to look at, well, some people call it the dark side, and some people call it the shadow self. We call it in the esoteric, freed from the dweller on the threshold, the sum total of the deposits of the personality experiences, so that tells us physical, emotional, and mental, in this, but more likely, much earlier lives. The diary prepares the disciple for confrontation with the dweller, evokes pointers from the soul as to which elements of the dweller must be faced next. And just from my own life, an example of when I was working as a financial director in the NHS many years ago, I had dream after dream after dream, where there was me, there was the office, there was the secretary, there was the IT team, and this figure came along and lifted the whole thing up and bagged it like in a big net and threw it. And I woke up and said, what did you do that for? And they said, your job is your dweller. Now, a job to most people, and particularly one with a lot of responsibility and authority and very well paid, is a very valuable thing to have. But for me, it was getting in the way of linking with the higher self, with that higher triangle. This was getting in the way. The job was feeding that part of me. Yeah, thank you, the lower part of it. And it was stopping me from linking there. That's one example of the dweller. And so we may not necessarily recognize it as something which is hateful or evil or dark or whatever, but it's something that gets in the way of the spirituality being able to express itself. And if we read Alice Bailey, as I do, and I can probably see some books on your bookshelf there behind you, the Tibetan Dwaraj Kul says the whole personality is the dweller. And until that personality is surrendered to the higher self, there will still be an element of self in it. And we have to look very carefully about it. It's a very tough thing to deal with. And so point 5, all these points are deep and require your consideration There's a point about mysticism that I already touched on in point 8. But point 9 summarizes the search for the signpost of real spiritual growth is fostered by the diarist who must ever be sincere to himself. Offload yourself with some of the most personal things if you really want to come to terms with them and lay them bare to your soul. Because if there's one thing I've learned from this process, it's one thing striving for spiritual goals and to be able to see one's personality in a better light than you've been able to see it before. But there's also what's required is surrender. And they want us to strive spiritually on the horizontal arm of the cross. Of course they do. But they want us to come in and be enriched with, and we have to do this with humility. Those that have gone before know better than us, but they're willing to give us the benefit of their experience. And we can't work it out for ourselves. We can't sit there with all the books in the world and say, I'm going to work my path through to liberation and freedom and salvation. We at some stage have to say, I can go this far, but no further. And I invite you to come in. And they will. Douglas Baker, who put these sheets together, said to me, you take one step towards the higher self, and it will take 3 steps towards you. Look, I thought, it will take 3 steps towards you. It's waiting and it's ready to do that. That's what evolution is about. It's about this. But we have got to play our part, and we've got to see that our personalities are very limited in this. Whereas for many years, I wanted to believe my personality could see me through my spiritual path. I accepted my soul, but thought, yeah, but Ted, I'll get where I need to go. And Teresa's smiling because she knows, like I know, and like Finian knows, and Sally knows, and Kirsty probably as well, that we can't do it ourselves. It's a big thing, though, because this world teaches us to actually be competitive, to be strong, to be positive. There is all that in integrating the personality, but after the integration is complete. And it's very much a case of the wonderful story, I don't often tell biblical stories, of Abraham and Isaac. And Abraham wants to do God's work, and God says, well, you must sacrifice anything and everything you've got to come to the mountaintop. He said, well, I've only got Isaac. And so, well, God says, come on, up you come. So he takes Isaac up the mountaintop, and he said, well, are you prepared to? And he said, I am. And he gets his knife and he's prepared to kill Isaac, his most precious possession, which is equivalent to our integrated personality. We've got there. We've got a personality that's really useful in the world, and it can earn us this, and we can do that with it, and we can go to places with it. But the sacrifice comes, and as he goes to plunge the knife in, an interceding angel comes along and knocks the knife out of his hand, and Abraham looks to God, and God said, you were prepared to do it. And it's my view that we don't have to sacrifice everything we've got, but completely nakedly, we have to say to our higher selves, you're in charge. And until we do that, we can't, it doesn't get let in, and it can't take us over.
5 minutes.
I think that's a good point to stop.
Yeah.
I think that's the end of the story. but I do welcome any questions, and spiritual doubt is very valuable if you're ready to take it, in the spirit it's intended. Okay.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Ted. That was brilliant, and I would agree. I didn't know that I was keeping a spiritual diary. I didn't know that was what it was called, but have kept one for many years. And something quite interesting, when I was at school, I was taught 2 different forms of writing style. So I was taught to print script, and I was taught a sort of a loopy, proper writing. And way back when I first started doing what was a spiritual diary, and I didn't know it was, I would just think of it as a download, a stream of consciousness. I would start printing in print script, and the first couple of pages, is what I call ego rubbish. It's just getting the ego, the personality stuff out. And then it would change into this loopy writing. and I wouldn't do anything, and it would start to be advice. It would be such wise things, and I'd be writing to myself, and then when I read it back later, I'd be like, oh my God, where did that come from? But the lovely thing was, it changed because this writing flowed. It would just do it all by itself, and I never really told anyone because I thought it was a bit strange. And yet this was happening for years before I even knew that it was called a spiritual diary. So that just surrender, being completely honest, and just seeing what comes through and not editing it, just allowing whatever needs to come through to come through. Really valuable insights. So thank you, Ted. So we're going to move now into our meditation. So if you get yourself comfortable, and I'll get this screen sorted. Oops, sorry. That's what we want. Okay, so get yourself comfortable, sitting reasonably upright, but nice and relaxed. And I just want to have an intention that we're coming together as a group, because we're not working individually in meditation. When we come into this group meditation, we're bringing our energies together. And in doing so, we are a lot more effective. We're working in much higher vibrational energies that help to lift the consciousness of all of mankind, whether they're consciously aware of it or not. So this group meditation is an act of service. Ted talked about service. Coming together in a group like this is an act of service. Okay, so we'll begin by just repeating to yourself, either silently or out loud, the affirmation of love that brings us into our heart center and brings us into communion with each other. So if we just repeat the affirmation of love. So in the center of all love, I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. So I invite you now just to gently close your eyes. And we're just going to ground our energy. So I want you to imagine that you are sending energy or roots down either through your feet or through the base of your spine, down into the earth under the building in which you are in. So we're connected to the earth, to matter, grounding these spiritual energies. And then we're just going to come into the present moment. So I want you to begin by just becoming aware of your body sitting on the chair. Just notice the clothes on your skin. And turn your awareness now to your sense of hearing, and just let sounds come in. So simply listening. And now take that awareness to your breath. And just gently watching the breath come into your body and watching the breath leave. Allow your body to relax. And allow the breath to get a little deeper with each in-breath. And you can think of the breath as bringing you into a vertical alignment between your personality and your soul. So continue to focus on the breath. And any time that your mind is distracted by thoughts, by physical sensations or sounds, as soon as you notice, simply come back to the breath. So keeping a gentle focus on the breath, let it take you down into a place of stillness within. Keep the focus on the breath. Coming back to it whenever you have been distracted. Coming back with loving kindness. Now I want you to take your focus to the very center of your chest. And imagine that you are breathing into your heart center. And imagine as you breathe into your heart, it is filling with light and love. Imagine that you are connecting through your heart center with your soul or your higher self. So there's an opening to that connection. Now I want you to imagine that you can bring white or violet purple or gold light down from your higher self through the crown of your head. And this light will pass down into all of the major energy centers or chakras in your body, vivifying them and bringing them into perfect alignment. Imagine that your heart is acting as a vessel to receive and distribute this light throughout your body. So pure white, violet purple, or gold light. Pouring down through your crown into your heart, and starting to fill your whole physical body, purifying, cleansing, and healing. Strengthening your immune system, your physical body, calming your emotions, and bringing you into a state of peace in your mind. So let your whole body fill with light, every cell. And now as your physical body fills with light, let it flow out into your etheric body, or the energy body or aura that surrounds your physical body. So you are radiating light and love throughout your being, distributed from the heart. Now imagine this light and love is flowing out into your home, filling your home and all those living beings that live with you. Your family, your pets, your plants. And now feel that light radiating out into your street, your neighborhood. And continue to let it radiate out into your community, filling hearts and minds with love and light. Now allow it to flow out into your town or your city. And imagine that you are connecting with all of those who are joining you in this meditation, both live and through the recording. And together let us all fill this nation with light and love. And now let it flow out into this part of the world to fill Europe. Let it radiate out to fill this hemisphere. And finally, let it fill the entire world. So that we join with all groups who are working in this way. Now imagine that you can see the whole of our planet from space. You can see our beautiful planet surrounded by this light. See it flowing out into the energy field or the aura, the etheric body of our planet. See it healing our planet, restoring the balance in nature. So our air is clean and fresh, our waters pure and clear. We have a healthy ozone layer and our planet is healed. See the animal and the plant life flourishing. See the light flowing into hearts and minds of all of mankind. Bringing peace, goodwill, and right relations within individuals, between individuals, within families, communities, within nations, between nations, with the animal kingdom, the plant, the mineral, with all of the kingdoms. Lifting our awareness and the collective consciousness of all. So that we can learn to live in peace and harmony with all. Hold a space for this energy and let it radiate out. And just continue to hold this space. Working together. Visualize these energies unifying and eliminating all divisions within humanity. Healing and transforming human consciousness and establishing right human relations. Continue to hold a space and let the light and love radiate out. So as you come into a vertical alignment, so that energy can radiate out on the horizontal. From the heart, the place of the connection of the two. Continue to hold this space. Let the energy of light and love radiate out. And now I invite you to gently open your eyes, and on your screen you'll see the words to the World Prayer, the Great Invocation. I invite you to repeat it silently or out loud, but we'll repeat it together, pausing between each stanza just to imagine the words pouring out. And we'll finish by sounding either silently or aloud 3 Oms. So let us begin. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you. Thank you indeed. Now we come to the time in this evening's session where I open it up to discussion, to questions, to comments, to anything that you would like to share. And if you're not so keen to share on the video and on the recording, you can always pop your question in the chat and I will read that out. So if you just give me an indication that you would like to speak, and I can unmute you. And if we got any questions, just make sure I can see everybody. Oh yeah, there you go. Oh, we're usually a little bit stunned after the group meditation. I don't know if you are noticing, but as we work together week on, like we've been doing this for quite a few weeks now, groups bond and bind in their energies. And as we work together each week, and it doesn't matter whether we're working, time and space don't matter. So those of you who join us on the recording are still working in this group. But you do find, and I've found this in working with groups in the past, that we get more and more effective as we build that group entity in the group meditation. So you may even be noticing that more energy is coming through when you're going into the group meditation and you're feeling a bit sort of stunned energetically afterwards. So that's quite normal. It can often help to make sure you drink plenty of water with that process. Has anyone got, no? You got anything more to add, Ted? Oh, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think that in keeping a spiritual diary, the effect it has on your consciousness is that you realize that even if the person has, as I was for a period of time, fairly alone on the horizontal arm, you can go inwards and loneliness can be replaced by aloneness. But if you don't have access to the vertical, because you're not interested, not to the group here, but people aren't interested or they don't believe in that sort of thing as well, you can be very, very, very isolated if the horizontal arm of the cross isn't working for you. But the other thing is, it is so important because, the ancient Egyptians used to say that this life is a preparation for death. And if that is the case, we can't just be content with, and often things working out on this horizontal arm of the cross. We have to go into the vertical arm. But taking it a bit further, and there seems to be a lot of people that I've done work for recently, the soul will interrupt your life on the horizontal. If it can't get in, it'll break a relationship, it'll cause a job to end, it will cause you maybe to, in line with the chart, the soul wants you to know that you're not down here for that bottom triangle. In those, it is trying to awaken. It's not trying to awaken everybody, and that's another whole subject as well about, is it 92% on the involutionary arm, which is what I'm told, and only 8% on the evolutionary arm, which means that if you're sitting in a room of 10 people, picked at random, you're not going to find many people who are on the wavelength. And this is what some of the young people who I'm doing charts for now are telling me.
Yes.
My friends don't think like I do. They're saying, come on, the pubs are open again. Come on, we'll go and do this. And to outer. And I just want to sit and meditate. They say there's something wrong with you. I said, well, the only thing I can say is you're in the minority. But we don't know what our past lives have led us to, but they've certainly led us to this point here. So I do think that this idea for people who are spiritually orientated of dealing with this and this at the same time is much more complicated. And it's my understanding, and I'm suggesting it to you, than some spiritual books would kind of indicate, where you can home in on the spiritual without having to see the personality life as very much tied up in the spiritual development.
No, because we're here to spiritualize matter. We're here, to bring that energy through into our lives. It's not just like going to church on Sunday and then not behaving in a Christian way the rest of the week. It's not like that. It's pervading throughout. It's living as a spiritual being.
And that's what that cross symbolizes, going in to give out.
That's right. And that's that Christ consciousness, do you know what I mean, that you are radiating out.
Yeah.
And I really value your comments on the isolation, because I think that is something that anybody who embarks upon a spiritual path and has heard the call of their soul, and that bridge is opening, the isolation is can be a real challenge. And it might be that you're not working so much on that vertical arm in a normal way. People can be working in all sorts of ways, but to come together with a group of people who at least speak the same language and understand that isolation is a really valuable thing to do.
And sometimes life can be so tough for people that they actually find that there is no mitigating circumstances in the outside world to make them feel any better. Yeah. So they'll either just go to bed and sleep, or they'll just want to be on their own, and people say they're depressed. But actually, in that still silence of nothing on the outside, that's when the soul will use it. And this is what happened when Easter died. I was given that I didn't want to know anything to do with the outside world. I still had to go in and do my job, but I was grieving so much, and I just wanted to be alone. And in that aloneness, I got contacted.
Yeah.
Because I was receptive.
That's right.
another good point to make about this is the arm of expressivity.
Yes.
This red horizontal, outward, 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 and this is receptivity. And we seem to be
the heart is where we are receptive. It is our heart. Do you see what I mean? That's the heart chakra is where the vessel, the cup, if you like, the receptive vessel. The other thing I just wanted to mention that came up as you were talking just now, quite often it's illness that will be the wake up for people. And we know that especially as chakras start to open and are able to take in more energy, that opening process of, especially if you're starting to open, you know, the chakras above the diaphragm, so you're opening the heart, the throat, the ajna, it causes an inflammatory response in the physical body. So sometimes it's illness that isolates people or takes them out of the world, and that brings them into a place. Sometimes their physical body is not working so well, and it takes them in to do the inner work. So sometimes the soul will use illness.
Without doubt. I have seen that in a lot of people's lives. The added danger with that is that there is an emotional complication, because people then start to worry about the illness because they're not informed that this is actually for the best.
That's right.
And they just see it. Yeah.
But that's where it can be really helpful to see it from a soul's perspective, to see anything that's happening in your life from a soul's perspective. And this really came home to me when I was sort of in a real personality. Why has this happened to me? Why is this relationship happened to me? Why is all this? And then someone said to me, okay, what have you learned from this? Well, after I'd written about 8 A4 pages of what I'd learned from it, it was very clear and evident that my soul was being extremely efficient. In a short few years, I got 8 pages worth of learning from one encounter that, you know, that could have taken a whole lifetime.
And just to point in on that, I know you feel grateful for that, and I feel grateful for what I've gone through. I get people coming up to me, not esoteric people, not people for chart readings, and they say, go through some of the things that have happened in your life. Do you know, nothing's happened in my life like that at all. And I think the soul isn't pushing them, because this idea of the dweller on the threshold, according to Alice Bailey, Discipleship in the New Age, the Tibetans' work, the dweller on the threshold only appears when you're on the spiritual path. And so for a lot of people, yes, they'll have the ordinary problems, but they won't get shaken about like spiritual people do. And what happens, people say, that person's spiritual, they're going through hell, and they usually are. You're a case in point, and to a lesser extent, maybe I am as well, and Kirsty, but we go through a lot. Yes.
Oh, Michael, yes. Michael, if you unmute yourself.
I just wanted to make the point that people don't really have any choice about whether they're on the spiritual path or not, because the earth is going through a significant spiritual metamorphosis, and we're all on board it. So I think the period of time that we're in now, I think kind of a recognition of spirituality is not so optional, because I think we're in a stage where people are going to have to learn very quickly, and kind of come to terms with things very quickly, and enormous amounts of change. So I think this incarnation, this period, is one of intense kind of spiritual growth. So that's the point I wanted to make, is this time on the earth now, I think, is a spiritual phase.
Yeah.
So we're not just kind of neutral players. We're actually kind of on board that train anyway.
Yeah.
That's my observation.
Thank you. No, I would agree completely. And, you know, I can't remember where I was reading the other day where it said, you know, if you have a particularly tough life where you make a lot of advancement spiritually and you're really challenged, you might get a bit easier one next time round. I don't think that's happening at the moment. I think people are getting tough life after tough life after tough life. And I think it's like Capricorn, as you get higher up the mountain, the path gets steeper and more rocky. There might not even be a path. And there's not really many grassy banks to just sit and have a little rest. Your goal is on the top of the mountain and you're being pushed to reach that top. Oh, Finian. If you unmute, there you go.
Okay. I was just thinking, Michael's right, but it's even more intense than that. Because look at this business Leicester where I am, is in its second lockdown.
Mm.
And what I think about that is it's a nudge.
Mm.
We're not being given the option, am I going to respond or am I just going to let it all flow over me? Because two important things have happened. Globally, and it's global, that's the amazing thing, the powers that be have made everything stop. Well, you see, when we had our first beginning lockdown, I was immediately thinking, because I've got groups of people that I work with, that sort of thing, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
And what came through to me was a little ritual. The form of it doesn't matter drastically. But it said, light a candle, meditate, get in touch with your higher self by whichever means you do, and it'll tell you what to do. But it'll tell you what to do every day if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
It might mean don't go to Asda today, go tomorrow. Literally that, because, you know, if you meet, you know, how many times have we had a nasty situation? Somebody drives into the back of our car or something, and you think, if I went 5 minutes later or 5 minutes earlier, it wouldn't have happened. Well, I'm dealing with the lockdown and the virus a bit like that. I'm trying to get as much evidence from trying to contact my higher self to say this is what I need to do.
Mm.
And this is when I need to do it. And that's a big change. You know, so we can see this as a negative thing. Oh, I can't go and do this. I can't go and see Granny, and I mustn't go and buy this, and I can't do that, and I can't do that. But it's a positive thing, because it's giving us the space to do some of this work on the vertical line.
Totally.
Because so many people are rushing around chasing their tails on the horizontal line. It's about bad habits.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that's amusing me, I'm not going to get political, but the politicians are trying to restart things, running on the mantra of economic growth. It's not going to happen because they've scared everybody and said stop. So people are going to be a bit more careful how exactly they start up.
Mm.
And, you know, but the thing that's making me smile is these guys in charge who think they're important, they haven't caught that one because they're not in tune at all with the vertical, most of them. You just listen to them, it's obvious. And it doesn't matter what side of what colour of what fence they're on, they're all the same. They're all saying the same thing.
So listen, tune into your higher self rather than the television.
Absolutely. And can I also congratulate you on the power in that meditation? I was right into it. So you're doing good work there, Teresa. I'm pleased.
Yeah, and you can probably tell the impetus is coming from my higher self. A lot of I mean, I have a rough guy, but a lot of it comes through. Yeah.
And if while I'm still speaking, can I thank Ted for a very insightful presentation? He says he doesn't quote the Bible very often, but my answer to that is I'll make a Kabbalist out of you yet, Ted. Because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
These stories are teaching stories. They're not just obscure things that code.
No. No.
They've got esoteric meaning behind them a lot of the time.
That's right.
Particularly parts of the Old Testament works like that.
Oh yes.
I've been doing a lot of research with another group that I'm working with, and I heard a good one that might make you smile, because it was an old rabbi who's very Kabbalistic, but he's now speaking in English rather than Hebrew. And he said, let's forget about this coronavirus and all these fancy words that we've never heard before. What we've got is a plague. And we know about plagues. There's been loads of them through the centuries. But one of the major rabbis said, do you know how to protect yourself from a plague? And the answer came back, there's 3 verses in the book of Exodus describing how to make the incense that you offer to God in the temple. It's written out in 3 verses in the book of Exodus. And the very special rabbi said, if you read those verses and meditate on them 3 times a day, you won't get the plague. Very simple, but this was a highly spiritual rabbi from the time of Shakespeare, who's revered all over the world today. That's what he said, dead simple. It's going to take 5 minutes 3 times a day and read 3 verses. And because what's behind that esoterically is you've been told to do something relatively simple. And because you're doing it, they're going to help out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the story of Naaman the leper. He was told by one of the prophets to go and wash in the River Jordan. The River Jordan is a tiny little river. It's hardly a river at all in places. And he took one look at it, and his psychological response was, why would I need to go and wash in that? I'll go home and wash in my own river that looks like a river. He immediately kicked back against something simple. But the esoteric answer is, if somebody tells you to do something simple to help protect yourself, just go do it.
Yeah.
Can't be easier.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Can I just add to Finian there and say, I'm only in my later days discovering the esoteric significance of so much of the Bible that I had pushed to one side at one stage. And I was told by my higher self, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater as far as the Bible is concerned. And it's interesting, without you knowing that, this is recent, that you've homed in on those 2 things. So I look forward to Saturday anyway. It'd be a talk on a different level from tonight, and I have sent you an email with a handout.
I'll just make one point which will make you smile, Ted. I took a degree in biblical studies 40 years ago. I'm only finding out what you just said now. It's true.
Brilliant.
It's all about walking along the path.
Yeah.
Lovely. Right. Well, thank you for that brilliant discussion. And thank you, everybody. Next week, where I'm going to talk to you about the impending Leo full moon. And then we have, I'm not sure what's happening the week after that. And then we have Finian is going to give us a talk on the Kabbalah as a key to the intuition. So I'll keep you in touch. We've got lots of good stuff coming up. So go and have a lovely evening, and thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste.